Well, hello everyone again. In Unit 1 of our course, we discussed the importance of taking intentional time for God in your life. Let me pull up the prayer time handout that we went through for a brief review. Remember, these are just to help us visualize these practices. In real life with God, they are much more fluid. For example, I love to spend time praying about all kinds of things during the Amidah. Sometimes during the blessings of holiness, I love to just spend time feeling His presence. I love to read my Bible and listen and see how the Lord might be speaking to me through the Scripture. So far in our course, we have spent some time interacting with the Siddur. We'll continue this throughout our course, touching on different pillars each unit. We also discussed how fundamental your daily Bible time is. We are engaging this throughout our course using the daily Devar. Remember here that the purpose is to be in your Bibles every day. The daily Devar is a tool to help with that, but there are other tools as well, and you can choose your own pace if you need to. The one thing that I recommend, however, is that you don't just kind of spot read your Bible, like choose a verse to read here or there. That's okay sometimes, but regularly. The reason is you won't internalize the entire Bible as a whole. Sometimes reading only scriptures that you're familiar with and not the ones that are more challenging to interact with. So I recommend either reading through the entire Bible from beginning to end, or at different places like we do at the Daily Devar, where we read the whole Bible over a period of time, or choosing a specific book to read through from beginning to end and cycle through the books in your own order. Over the next few units, we are going to be zeroing in on our contemplation square, and then we'll move into our active prayer category. And we'll be getting into different ways that we hear from God and ways to learn how to discern God's voice from the other voices we hear in our lives. Because we're also discussing Shabbat in this unit, I thought it would be prudent to focus on contemplation, stillness and rest, waiting and listening. Now, let me tie this into Shabbat. Shabbat is a time of rest. 6 days you shall work, the seventh day shall be a day of rest, a day when we don't create, a day when we don't spend money, a day when we don't do the normal doings of life, However, Shabbat is not only a time for you and God. Shabbat is a time for you and your community to come together before God. So Shabbat is like a community rest time. So our weekly communal Shabbat isn't just about you resting with God, like we're talking about in this video here. It's about our community resting in God together. And that's why it is so critical that you have your own times with Him throughout the week and throughout the day, that you can stop doing and be in His presence and rest. And then you'll take that intimacy and you'll take those experiences that you have throughout the week, and it will inform our community and help our community to then come together in His Shabbat rest. If there was an ingredient list for growing deeper with the Lord, entering more into His life, experiencing His presence, and of course, learning to hear God speak to you more consistently, it would be this: time, rest, stillness, and intimacy. I am assuming the big foundations for spiritual life are already a part of your life. Yeshua faith, a strong Messianic Jewish community to come around you, Torah and Bible reading and study, that you're already engaged with, Jewish prayer and Jewish life. So anything that I'm saying here really builds off of these disciplines. To take these practices and separate them from these foundations is not a spiritually healthy place to be. But coming from these foundations, they can bring a lot of life. So time, rest, stillness, and intimacy. These are all scary words for us, aren't they? Most of us feel that we don't have the time. We have too much to do to rest. We can't imagine ever being, really still for more than 30 seconds, and we're afraid of real intimacy. It has been said, we're into microwaving, God, on the other hand, is into marinating. And on occasion, he'll really blast someone, knock them off their feet. But more often, I think he's much more gentle, and he waits to see if we will desire him enough to take the time to really tune in. See, I think God is talking to us through the Holy Spirit all the time, but it's like we're on the wrong radio broadcast station. And so we need to learn how to gently turn the knob on the radio and be quiet enough to clear the static and find the right frequency. The Holy Spirit can be so gentle, and God is looking for people who will take the time to cultivate and to treasure a real, intimate relationship with him. If I'm in a room filled with people and everyone's talking and Raina says something, I will recognize her voice immediately out of all the other voices. That's because I have an intimate relationship with her, and we've developed intimacy by spending lots of time together. When Raina and I first met, we didn't date so much, but we got to know each other hiking on the Appalachian Trail for hours and hours and hours on end. And that gave us an inordinate amount of time together to develop intimacy. Now that we have all the kids and we're so busy, we have to be really intentional to make sure every day to spend time enjoying each other. And, we have a scheduled date every week that we do. We like to go out in the afternoon and take a prayer walk together and make sure to spend time with the Lord together, talking with each other, listening. It's become a critical part of our marriage and our relationship. Because if we aren't intentional about consistently renewing and cultivating new intimacy, we know that we would slowly drift apart and we'd forget how to hear each other. We'd go in different directions, and eventually we wouldn't even know each other anymore. It's exactly the same with God. The more time you spend with God, the more time you renew and cultivate intimacy with him, the easier it becomes to hear his voice and to feel his gentle presence. If you will allow me, I would like to spend some time sharing my story as I have learned to spend more time with God over the years. This is something that he has been working with me on, and really it's taken me years and years to really understand. I used to really pride myself on being busy. I know in the beginning it was like if I could work an 80-hour work week, in ministry, that would be like something I would work towards. I think that I used to pride myself on being busy because I felt like I was doing good work for God and accomplishing a lot, and it made me feel important. But what would always happen was that God time would slip away because I was so busy doing more important things. And then gradually, time with Raina would slip away. And then gradually, my family time would slip away. And it was like down this slippery slope. And I remember sitting with Raina once at a restaurant, and we were, using the placemat to map out all of the things that I was doing, trying to cut something out so that we could try to find more family time and more time for prayer and for rest. And we didn't find anything. Everything was too important. But then one frightfully busy season, I remember a time when I was on overload. I was stressed out. Ironically, I was preparing for a conference that I was leading with tons and tons of material. I was the main presenter and I was speaking on healing prayer, but I was feeling very unhealed myself. I had deadlines on top of deadlines. I had obligations on top of obligations. And then I was out one afternoon and my car got a flat tire. A flat tire, who can have time for a flat tire? And worse, a police officer stopped me because of my flat tire, and then he saw that my license was expired, and he made me promise not to drive. And my son Chaim was in the back seat, so I had to promise not to drive with him right there in the car. I had a nursing home service that I was leading in 20 minutes, and I was already late, not to mention the dozen other tasks that, I didn't have time to do. So I remember just asking God frantically, why? And it was silence. Really, God had just graciously cleared the whole afternoon for me. A day later, I was just a wreck. I was burnt out. I felt like there was a wall between God and me that was 10 feet thick. And as I was driving home, it was actually before Shabbat, I stopped by a spot on a river near my house. And I went down to the river and I just got down on my knees and just cried out to him, where are you? Where did you go? Silence. I spent an hour there discouraged. I cried and I just didn't know what to do. And then as I was leaving the river, I felt God speak to me in such a subtle, feather-like way that I could have just easily brushed off. It was as if he was saying to me, I want you to spend lots of time with me. And then I felt like he told me exactly how much time he wanted me to spend with him each day. And my reaction was, that's crazy. I don't have that kind of time. I can't do that. Silence. So I went home and told Rain about it, and I tentatively started to try. But I was afraid to do all of it. I was afraid that I wouldn't get all the other things that I needed to get done. In the beginning, I found that I'd do everything I could to avoid this time. I would just sit there, tired and feeling very unspiritual. But then, after a few weeks of taking some time, I found that I was becoming more rested physically and spiritually, and that wall started to come down. I had a swing outside in the backyard that I decided to turn into my prayer swing, and it gradually over time began to become a place that I could go to and look forward to sitting down and just resting. Even if I didn't feel anything from the Lord, I started to have positive associations with that spot. The wall started to come down. We often miss that rest is an essential component to intimacy with God. I had this huge wall because I was so tired. If you're like me, you might feel like you're letting God down if you rest. You should be getting up at 5 a.m. to pray, and if you fall asleep during your prayer time, you failed, But God just isn't like that. It's okay to get up at 5. This new season of my life right now, getting up really early and spending a couple of hours with the Lord is just has been a joy and a real blessing for me. But it hasn't always been that way. There have been times when I remember feeling so tired for several days in a row that I would just sit down for my prayer time and I would literally sleep the entire time. Nothing spiritual, just sleep. I just lean back, fall asleep. And I felt guilty about it. At that time, Mike Evans, who wrote the book we're reading, Why Not Waste Time with God, he and I were talking once a week. He was mentoring me. And so I talked with him about it, and I said, listen, I'm falling asleep during my prayer time. What do you think? And he said this. He said, Nathan, if your little 2-year-old son wanted to spend time with you, but he was just so tired that he came in and curled up on your lap and went to sleep, would you be angry with him? So take prayer naps. I've loved prayer naps. And sometimes the Lord can give you dreams, or he just nurtures you and renews you, and that prepares you to be able to receive something from him later on in the day or later on in the week. Just like we do everything else in life with better sleep, I think we are wired to better hear from God when we are well rested. And if you're really run down or if you're burnt out, you might need a lot of rest before you recover. It's not something you just do once. It might be a few weeks, might even be a few months of rest and stillness. For me, after a month, he was talking to me again. It was like I hadn't experienced since my early times with him just after I had come to faith. I wanted to do more and more. It started to grow inside of me. And soon, sitting in God's presence with a cup of coffee or tea out on my swing or by the river, it became the highlight of my day. A few weeks later, when that wall was starting to come down, I remember asking God again, so how much time should I spend with you now? And he said, Nathan, I've already told you. And I said, that's crazy. Where am I going to find that time? And I felt that he said inside, Nathan, do you trust me with your time? Yes. Do you trust me with your family? Yes. With your children? Yes. And he listed each thing that I felt burdened with. Yes, yes. It was a long list. Do you trust me with these things? And so I just started doing it. I just started spending the time. And you know what? He started to help me to accomplish certain tasks in significantly less time. I've experienced God work out things in 20 minutes on my prayer swing, that would normally have taken me a week. He's given me outlines to sermons, answers to challenging issues that I'm working out. He'll sometimes let me know whether or not to make a phone call or send a particular email. He loves to give guidance with the children, with parenting issues, with marital issues, and how to respond to conflict. It's not always like that. Sometimes it's just nothing. Sometimes it's just kind of sit there and hang out, Often I'm terribly distracted. Sometimes I just fall asleep. What's key isn't what actually happens during that time. It's not like the experience or an encounter is what you need to have. What's key is that you just carve out the time to do it. And that begins to cultivate the kind of intimacy with God that becomes the fertilized soil where he can begin to speak to us. I remember one time on this journey when I had gone maybe a week or so, and I had felt like my prayer times were unproductive. It was like I was just there sitting, doing my thing, and the kinds of experiences I was just sharing just weren't happening, And so I decided to take an afternoon and spend 3-4 hours by a lake where I could hang out and spend some time with the Lord and read my Bible and journal and take a swim and that kind of thing, just relax. And so I did this, and I spent a good 3-4 hours, and it was nothing. I didn't feel, it was like another wall. I was just there. I was just hanging out. It was fine. It was restful. And then just as I was leaving, I felt him begin to sort of start to download a bunch of stuff that he wanted me to do, visions and things about my identity that he wanted me to know. That I don't think I would have had the space to hear had I not taken that time earlier on, or had I given up because I spent 10 minutes and I didn't experience anything. The Lord is looking for a relationship of trust with us. Not only where we trust him to answer us and to be present with us, but where he can trust us when he gives us a revelation or he gives us an insight of some kind, that he knows that we're going to bring that to him, that we're going to sit with him, that we have the regular set aside time that we can look forward to, and that he knows that we'll be there laying these seeds when he can give us more revelation or explanations or guidance along the way. When Raina and I went to the restaurant and we sat there trying to figure out how we could find more God time in our schedule and family time, the problem was that I had wanted to find a way to carve out time in my schedule for God. But he wanted me to start with him at the center, and then after that find room for everything else. He wanted me to just build my life around prayer and let other things that didn't fit fall away. God has done such incredible healings in my life since this time, but the greatest is teaching me how to be intimate with him again. I'm remembering a time when I was sitting on my prayer bench, doing just what we're talking about now, spending time with the Lord. And it was a beautiful summer day, and he brought up for me a memory that from high school, when I was in rebellion and I was, not living for the Lord. And the memory was about some advice that I had given someone in high school that was poor advice, and it had led them to make some poor choices in their life that really impacted them in a negative way. I had totally forgotten about the story. It didn't mean much to me when I was in high school, and it was as if he said, "You're at a point now where I want you to deal with this." this is keeping me from being closer with you. And so I just, it came up, and I just started to weep about it. I just felt the weight of my sin and the weight of my irresponsibility, if you will. And I didn't really know where to go with it. And I remember just getting off my swing and walking around, and I lay down in the grass, and I was reading my Bible, and I fell asleep. I just I put my head down on my Bible, and I just fell asleep in the grass, and then I woke up, and when I woke up, there was this ray of sunlight that was this, penetrating beam that landed right on a verse in Isaiah 54. I had been reading Isaiah 53 because I had felt so broken. I was like, maybe I should read about how Yeshua, came to take my sin here, and focusing on that chapter. This ray of light hit a verse in Isaiah 54 that said, "I will remember the shame of your youth no more." And I felt like he was using that verse to speak to me, to say, you are forgiven. I've washed you free from this, and now you can move more fully into my life. That's an example for me of how the Lord likes to take his time as he works on us, and as he helps us to become the kind of people that he wants us to be, and that will be in the kingdom of heaven. Another story that I can remember of prayer time, and this is why it's great to have a set prayer time that you do no matter what. We were having a busy day or whatever, and I was getting out to do my prayer time, and Rain and I were talking, and we were getting into some sort of disagreement about something. I have no idea what it was about, but we were snapping at each other a little bit, and the kids were there, and I remember feeling angry, and I said, I'm going to go take my prayer time, and I went out and shut the door and went down and stomped down the steps and sat in my bench, and it was like, I felt in that moment like his presence just lift, and I felt like he said to me, Nathan, I want you to go in and wash her feet. And my response was, no way, I'm right, and I need to just, so I'm not going to do that. No, Lord, I'm not going to do that. And it was silence again. He does that to me. He just stops talking when I'm not listening, So I said, fine, I'll do this. So I get it and come back in, and I kind of trudge through the kitchen, and I get a bowl and a towel, and everyone's watching me, all the kids in Reina, and I put the bowl down and I say, the Lord wants me to wash your feet, And so I did, and within 10 seconds, the weight of the room had lifted, and all the kids were giggling, and we all washed each other's feet, and Rain and I were able to forgive each other. And it's these kinds of things. It's like such a trajectory in your family life that makes all the difference, 10 years from now. And so I just wonder, like, if I hadn't had that time carved out to spend with the Lord, even if I didn't, wasn't feeling very spiritual in that moment, where would I have been? So I'm just so thankful for his faithfulness in my life to speak to me and to guide me and to shepherd me. That's what he does. So anyway, that psalm, be still and know that I am God, it really means something, doesn't it? We say, I think, I don't have time to spend with God in prayer because we have so many important things to do. But it's backwards. It really is. Once we begin to taste what life can be like when we start to cultivate intimacy with our Creator, it's like, how did I even live before? And jumping into a busy day and skipping your time with God, it's insanity. Think about it. You're skipping time with the God of the universe, who made everything, has control over everything in your life, is the source of every bit of your happiness, who actually wants to talk to you, who cares about you, who loves you. I mean, our time with him, which was once, perhaps an obligatory burden to add to the overfilled to-do list, it can become the most intimate, nurturing, and healing times in our lives. A super simple and easy way to begin, if this is new to you, is to have your morning coffee with him. Or, we've been setting aside this time of prayer in the morning. Try to tie it to some rhythm that you have. Tea time with God can be a great opportunity to spend some stillness with him. I like to have something like that, like a mug or something that helps me to helps my body to kind of remember and come into this prayer still mode. It helps me to relax. Having one spot like my prayer swing is critical, because it's like you have a place where you can go that's set aside, that's like a sanctuary of sorts that helps you to find peace and to rest. And that peace is what we need. It's the potting soil. Peace is the potting soil for revelation from God, from intimacy with him, his presence, and from hearing his voice and hearing his words. So start small. 5 minutes in the morning, can really make a difference in your life. And one cup of coffee might turn to two, or 5 minutes turns to 10, and it just gradually grows. The more time you spend with God, the more you want to spend time with him. The less time you spend with him, the less you want to spend with him. The more rested you are, the more time you want to spend with him as well. The busier you are, the less you want to spend with him. It just is how it works. So get cozy and comfortable and find a good spot. It can become your prayer place. You can integrate this time of stillness with praying from the Siddur, like I said, in the Amidah, and other times, other devotions that you do. Those things, like I said, are essential as well. So I'll just say that for what we've been talking about specifically today, the keys to learning to discern God's voice, we're going to get into some of the more specifics next unit, but the keys to learning how to discern his voice isn't so much about doing prayer as it is about being in stillness. Because we live in such a doing-oriented world. You have to work hard to quiet all of those other voices and all of those other worries and all of those other distractions that keep the Lord's voice distant from us. And if this is new for you, you'll see how difficult this is. Even 5 minutes is challenging. So again, start small and let it grow into a time of intimacy with God. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour. Ask him how much time he wants you to spend with him. And listen. Listen to the answer, even if it seems impossible. You'll open up incredible doors in your life for things to happen that you simply otherwise wouldn't see. The purpose of this time is not to have an agenda. It isn't to accomplish something or to have an experience. Your time with him is a time to be fully you, like you can't be anywhere else. It's a time to stop seeking approval and just to curl up on his lap and rest your head on his chest and do absolutely nothing but enjoy his presence. From the world's perspective, wasting time. But from God's perspective, the reason you were created. Let's take a moment to try this, even now. I'm going to pray and then give us 60 seconds to sit together in stillness. And let's just see what happens. See what comes up. See what you might hear from the Lord. Have your journal there, and you can write about your experience afterwards. Of course, we're not in real time here. We're over the video, but the Lord can work through a video too. In Psalm 62, we read, "My soul waits in silence for God alone." As we spend time with him, let's wait for his presence, wait for his healing, wait for his voice. Abba, I ask you this morning to bring your Ruach among us. And, we're stepping out on faith here to practice being in your presence, to practice hearing from you. So I ask that you'd help us find stillness and find quiet and find peace. I ask that you would speak to us here, that you'd share an insight or a word or an encouragement or something that you might want us to know. And now take some time to journal about your experience. If you felt like the Lord was speaking to you about something, if you just felt a sense of peace, if you felt nothing at all, if you felt some of your worries and anxieties come up, just write about it. Write about those experiences. In the coming units, we will be building on this and learning how to hear from him more specifically about specific areas and how to deal with some of the anxieties and worries. And let this become a regular part of your daily prayer time and see what the Lord does. Happy praying, and let me know how things are going, and let me know if there's anything you'd like to talk about. Shalom.